Tim, thanks very much indeed. Now, while we were waiting for Gordon Brown to become Prime Minister, many people wondered how he could portray himself as having a new agenda when he'd been at the heart of government for so long. Well, now we know. On Wednesday, he set out his programme for his first year, and at its core is a proposal to build hundreds of thousands of extra homes to ease the pressure on house prices. But why do we struggle to match the supply of housing to demand in this country, where our continental neighbours have succeeded? Paola Buonadonna reports.
Essen in the Ruhr Valley in northwest Germany. This used to be the country's industrial powerhouse. Now most people work in the service industry and they're very keen to live in large houses with lots of green around them. Wow. Teacher Nadine Budych shows me around the house she and her husband have just bought. It's their first property.
So what attracted you to this place? Why did you decide to buy this place?
We wanted 3 bedrooms, a study, a big garden. We wanted to be near to a park, near to a shopping center and close to work. We only need 20 minutes to go to work, both of us, my husband and me.
So this is perfect for you, really?
Yeah, of course.
And you're going to have a family here, do you think?
Hopefully.
It's big enough, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. You want me to show you the rest?
Sure. Sure,
Okay.
let's go have a look.
Come in.
The house cost Nadine and her husband the equivalent of £135,000. Nadine's father, who's a builder, is helping them renovate the property. The amount of space and comfort enjoyed by this couple will seem extraordinary to many young home buyers back in Britain, desperate to get a foothold on the ladder.
Yeah.
Thanks to a remarkably stable property market, things are a lot more relaxed around here.
This is the sort of house that 2 public sector workers can aspire to in Germany. While in the UK, the average nurse cannot afford to buy a home practically anywhere anymore. Prime Minister Gordon Brown has made housing one of his top priorities. And this week we have learned that he is determined to increase supply. But is there a thing or two that he could be learning from the Germans?
In this Essen suburb, a small family building firm is hard at work. Many of these houses have already been bought off-plan. The relatively fast planning process means even small companies are guaranteed lots of work.
On this construction area, we planned 15 houses, and it depends on to get the permission between 3 or 4 months. So, and we are finished. I think it needs 12 months, 9 to 12 months.
So altogether is about a year for
Yes.
the whole process from
Yes.
beginning to end?
Yes, it is, yeah.
And then people can come in and live here?
Yeah, I hope so, yeah.
This week, Gordon Brown announced that 3 million new homes are to be built across the UK by 2020, despite the fact that previous lower targets could not be met. Here in Germany, there are no central targets. It's up to the local authorities to decide how many dwellings they need and to see that they're built. And they have huge incentives to build as many as they can.
The German cities get a grant from the state, which is relative to the number of residents. So that means when we get many residents, we get much more money to run our infrastructure, and we get a part of the income taxes of the people who live there. That's why we have to build houses. We have to invest in housing and planning for housing to make people come here.
This model has worked well in Germany, but in Britain we're actually moving in the opposite direction, with the government inclined to weaken the powers of local authorities over housing. Although their official policy on housing won't be out for months, the Conservatives seem rather keen on the German approach.
One of the problems of targets, of course, is it doesn't matter how big you set them. If you don't reach those targets, then it doesn't actually house a single additional person. And I suspect the announcement we've heard in the last week is all about big figures, ambitious targets, but actually no real delivery on the ground. The German example is interesting because what they've done is to say, let's empower local communities to actually gain some of the benefit from that additional housing, the extra services that they can bring, actually get buy-in from local people, and it's got to be a better way.
The historic district of Hartwich, on the fringe of the Essen conurbation, is surrounded by beautiful woodland. Yet this area isn't considered off-limits when it comes to building new homes, as it almost certainly would be in Britain. Dr. Oliver Marc Hartwich is a native of these parts, but now works in London for the right-of-centre think tank Policy Exchange. He's an expert on the housing situation in the two countries and thinks real progress in Britain won't be possible without a change in attitudes.
The key issue here is land supply. It all comes down to how much land we actually use for development. And if you ask the average Brit, they will tell you, well, we are using 50, 60, 70% of the country for housing. It's not true. It's not more than 10%. The Germans use 12, 13%. And what they get is simply better housing. Bigger housings, more spacious housing and more affordable housing.
The upside of building on just 3% more of their land means that ordinary Germans like Nadine, whom we met earlier, can afford to live in larger houses, perhaps have a garden, a shorter commute to work. It also means that German parents don't need to worry about where their kids will be able to afford to live in 20 years' time. But many in Britain feel that building on greenfield sites is just not the answer.
In the announcements this week, the government stressed that the green belt will be preserved and brownfield sites will take the brunt of the new housing developments. But the countryside lobby is still concerned, as the use of greenfield sites outside the green belt was not ruled out.
Once the countryside is developed, it's gone forever. Britain is one of the most urbanised countries in Europe, and indeed England itself is more heavily urbanised than Germany. So we think that we need to be very careful in the way we use our land. We need to focus housing development and housing investment on brownfield land, previously used land, rather than actually releasing more greenfield land for development.
But critics of the British system say there needs to be a debate on how to balance our love for the countryside with the needs of city dwellers.
Nobody actually wants to concrete over the countryside. But actually, we have to talk about quality of life, not just in the countryside, but in the cities. 90% of our population lives in the cities. So actually, if we're concreting over all their gardens, all their nice backyards, I mean, they're losing out on the quality of life. We can't just build on brownfields in the cities because we're losing garden space, we're losing parks, and we're losing all the nice places that our people really appreciate in the cities.
Affordable housing in plentiful supply has a huge effect on the standard of living of ordinary people. The German way is to empower local communities and build on more of their land. Gordon Brown's government will have to find solutions that work for Britain and go beyond simply promising millions more homes that may never be built.